Q&A. Question. There are those that say that Yiddish is Lashon HaKodesh. What are sources for this? Also, mainly from the Rebbe Sichos. I never heard that Yiddish is Lashon HaKodesh. And I heard that Yiddish is a very special language, and the Rebbe wants Chassidim to learn Yiddish. So there's a famous story. There's a Yid that he passed away already. He was an older bocher, but he was a bocher in 770. And he told me the background for the sikha that I'm going to share. That, if I'm not mistaken, Parshas Vayeshev Toshin Memches, the Rebbe by the Fabrengen complained, how come bochrim are speaking to each other in English and they're discussing in Yanim of Chassidus and they're speaking about Chassidus, but why are they talking in English? These are bochrim that grew up in Chassidish homes, they speak Yiddish, and why are they speaking in English? What was the story that the Rebbe spoke about? That there was something called the Kanim, the Shivas HaKanim. The Kanim was an organization that the Rebbe started. Kanim means branches. Shivas Kani Amanora, the branches of the menorah. But the Rebbe wanted bochrim to a rotation of 7 bochrim. Every week a different bocher should say a pilpul in Nigla. And there was a rotation. Every week a different bocher in 770 would say a pilpul, he prepare himself. Some that needed help from an Halacha, but usually talented bochrim that could learn on their own. And a rotation every 7 weeks. And after a while, the Rebbe said also for Chassidus, and there was a rotation. Every Motzei Shabbos in the winter was the kan of Nigla, and every Friday night was the kan of Chassidus. By the way, in Postville, many years ago, Rabbi Gurkov also would do that. He would call over every week a different bocher in Shir Gimel, and to give him a pilpul to say, and the bocher would say, and we tried doing it a number of times throughout the years, maybe we'll do it again with the current Shir Gimel. Have each Shir Gimel bocher once a week give a pilpul in Nigla. That'll be good training for you to become a learning teacher. So I know now how to give a class. And Rabbi Gurkov, he couldn't say no. Every single bacher had to do it, no matter what. And some bachrim were very upset. So there was the kanim in Chassidus, and the kanim in Chassidus. So the Friday night, by Yeshiv, if I'm not mistaken, and a bacher said the pilpul, and either he said it in English, or he said it in Yiddish, but after the fact, the Bochrim were discussing what he spoke about, and they were talking in English, and the Rebbe walked by. And the Rebbe wasn't there by the Khan, but the Rebbe was in his room, downstairs, whatever, but not downstairs, in his room. And the Rebbe overheard, and the Rebbe, that's when he heard them talking in English, and that's when the Rebbe, I think they made a comment at the time, but for sure the next day he spoke about it. So that the Rebbe wants Bochrim to talk in Yiddish. Then there's a famous sikha. If anybody wants information, Chelak Chof Aleph, look at the sikhas in the Sofis Mishpatim, page 446. Here the Rebbe talks a long sikha about how special Yiddish is, but the Rebbe clearly says that the fact that Yidden spoke Yiddish and not Kodesh is because they didn't want to use Lashon Kodesh for random conversations. So that proves that Yiddish is a Lashon Choil. Yiddish is considered a weekly, or whatever the term translation would be, of a language. However, the fact that it's been used for Yidden for so many years, and Shiurim and all that, definitely has a special maila, an advantage, and then the Rebbe says, especially for Chassidus, and the Rebbe continues talking about the matters of Yiddish. You can learn the sikha with, obviously the sikha is in Yiddish, and you can learn it from there. So, I don't think it's correct to say that it's Lashon Kodesh, but it definitely has something special about it. Question. Oh, yes.
Didn't Rabbi Katz used to hazard 770, like a different cats, like
Pinchas Katz with Chazer what?
am I in English?
I'm sure there were Chassidim that spoke in English and taught in English. If someone doesn't know Yiddish, then obviously you have to use English. There's a whole conversation, so you're supposed to teach Yiddish as a language. That is a big argument. The pastors know. You're not meant to teach Yiddish as a language, but a Chassidish Yid is meant to know Yiddish and speak Yiddish to his children, and this way they speak Yiddish at home and they continue speaking Yiddish. That's what the Rebbe wants. That's pretty clear. The Rebbe told us to a number of people that I know. So there's such a concept. But if you're teaching in a class, I don't teach in Yiddish because most people aren't going to understand what I'm saying. When I do speak in Yiddish, I was on the other day, somebody listened to me. I was talking to a friend of mine in Yiddish on the WhatsApp, and the guy was like, he's talking Yiddish, like it was the strangest thing. Yeah, I talk to my friends in Yiddish. Those that know Yiddish, I talk to them in Yiddish. Okay, next. For hard cheese, we wait 6 hours. What about if it was melted? According to Chabad, I assume that this bocher has been listening to Let's Talk Kashrus. I listen to Let's Talk Kashrus, one of the podcasts that I listen to. As anyone that listens to podcasts, I think should listen to. Every week they put out like sometimes 5 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes max episode about Kashrus. Very interesting stuff. And this past week, there was this rabbi from Chicago. They asked him a whole bunch of random questions, very interesting. And they asked him about melted cheese for about 6 hours, Parmesan cheese, the heavy ones. So he said that there's a sefer called Yad Yehuda. I don't know who that is. The Yad Yehuda says that melted, hard cheese, aged cheese, once it's melted, it loses its acid. It's not as hard, and now you only have to wait an hour like regular cheese. So the bocher is asking, what's the Chabad opinion? So I checked up Rabbi Broin's website, and he says, no, we wait 6 hours even for melted cheese. Now, to understand, this is not the Chabad opinion. Rabbi Broin is a Chabad rabbi, but he's not quoting Chabad poskim. He's quoting a whole bunch of other tshuvas. There's two main, in my opinion, main Chabad, maybe three, Chabad halacha questions that you're looking for. What I look for all the time, I didn't check now, but there's what's called SMS Larav in Eretz Yisrael. It's a website. Then there's Shulchan Aruch Harav, a guy Rabbi Yaakov Goldstein. Then there's Asktherav, Rabbi Broin. Now they will have the same question, and the three websites will have different answers. So in Chabad itself, there are different answers. I don't think there's a Chabad answer. Again, this is one of the many questions you have to ask your personal rabbi. What do I do? Should I wait for 6 hours after melted cheese? Rabbi Broin will tell you, yes, I think the SMS Larav is more makel, and they don't have this question, but the way I saw other cheese questions that they asked, Rabbi Broin is saying all cheese is basically 6 hours. Feta cheese and Parmesan cheese and almost all those other ones. Yes?
Why do we wait 6 hours
For
those cheeses?
Because they're aged and they have more acid in them and they last longer in your mouth. So when, the general rule is if it was aged for 6 months, but the svar is that once it was melted, then it loses its heaviness, and now you can only wait an hour. So again, it's a machlekes hapaiskim. I brings a whole list of paiskim that say it doesn't change. It's still 6 hours, and he brings the Yad Yehuda that says to be makel, but he doesn't go by him. But the CRC, other paiskim do go by it. So it's not a Chabad thing. It's a thing you have to ask your personal rabbi, not your mashpia, your rabbi, unless your mashpia is your rabbi. If someone leaves a tissue box in Zal, can I take? Yes, Almi? Can we use your tissue box? You're the only one that leaves your tissue box in Zal. Everyone's asking about your tissue box.
Who asked it?
Who asked it? I don't know who asked it. I don't know what kind of answer it is. The answer is like this. The answer is there's two halachas. There's something called hefker and a similar halacha called ייאוש midas. If somebody makes something hefker, obviously you're allowed to take it. He made it hefker. Now, if Zalmi is the only one that thinks that Zalmi there's a box of tissues in Zal the whole time, we all know. But Zalmi doesn't make it hefker. It's still Zalmi's. It's still his. The main thing that he uses it for is to throw it at people, the Seder, but it's his box. We know that. So Zalmi's box, he lets people use it, but pashtus. Now, not only that he lets people use it, whenever you ask him, he always says, yeah, because Zalmi's a sweetheart. So he always says yes to everybody. But when you ask him and he gives it to you as one thing. But if you didn't ask him, can you take it without his permission? So there's a rule called ייאוש midas. ייאוש means if somebody gives up on something, can I take it? So, meaning if you see a guy walking down the street and he drops a dollar bill and you don't have a chance to return it, and he gives up on it. Okay, it's not a good example, you have to return it right away. But let's say you hear someone says, I was on the beach the other day and I lost a $10 bill. You go to the beach the next day and you find the $10 bill and it passes to that person's. According to Halacha, you do not have to return it, you're allowed to take it. Because he gave up on it. And therefore, it turns it into hefker. So when he has a tissue box, the question is, does he assume that people are going to take it without permission? The guy that drops a $10 bill on the beach assumes that he's not going to find it again, and therefore he gives up. He's messiahish. The question is, when you leave a tissue box in Zal, that you assume guys are going to be using it. If you assume guys are going to be using it, then that means you gave up. Meaning, regardless if you want or don't want guys to use it, regardless if you let them or not, that makes no difference. What is your assumption? Do you think guys are going to use it or not? I would think that in our yeshiva, and most yeshivas for that matter, I would think that you would assume guys would use it. If you have like these Musoniki yeshivas, the guys are extra frum and looking for all the chaparayim more chumras, then maybe you would assume the guys are not going to touch it. But I think in our yeshiva, the average bocher sees a tissue, he needs a tissue, he's not going to start thinking, maybe I have to ask for a tissue, so just take a tissue. Right or wrong is irrelevant. Because that's what's going to end up happening. As a result, there's a ייאוש. That means Zalmi gives up on it. He knows that's going to happen. And if that's the case, you don't have to ask him permission. You can take lechatchila. If, however, you disagree with my reasoning and you think that no, most bochrim will ask permission, and Zalmi thinks the same way, and therefore Zalmi thinks that I think guy's going to ask me first. So he didn't actually give up, so he didn't give up, so then there's no use, there's no hefker. In that case, you cannot take it. A similar question, by the way, is leaving your shampoo in the mikvah. If you leave a bottle of shampoo in the mikvah, do you assume that you come by next day, is it still going to be there? Postville, yes, because now we have the new ledge over there. For you guys, it's not new. For me, it's new. And everyone puts their things. So I don't think for sure the majority of people are not going to go to that ledge and take a random bottle of shampoo. I think the majority of bochrim are not going to do that, and therefore I think that it's not going to be taken, and therefore it's not permitted. Yeah.
I had a big order and once used. Can't fully empty that within a few days because of people.
Where did you leave it? On the top of the ledge over there?
I got someone using it. I got someone using it.
Okay, I think that's a chiddush. I don't think most people would do that. But if everybody, but your shampoo doesn't get finished over there. You shampoo get people take it without your reshus? So the question is, it's all in your mind. And that's a 749 mikvah. If you leave a bottle of shampoo there, you come back 20 minutes later, it's empty. Right? There's no question. So it's for sure going to be. So then the moment you left it there, so if I see a bottle of shampoo at 749, I'm allowed to use it. And you come back, it's not. So you know people are using it. Okay, so then if you assume that it gets used, then I'm allowed to use it too. Which one's yours? That's even more uncomfortable. Yeah, I can imagine. How about the bars of soap? If someone uses your bar of soap? Okay, let's not get into the graphics. Point is, so if you assume if the owner assumes people use it, then it's ייאוש. Again, it's not, regardless if you want it or not. If you assume it's going to happen, then there's ייאוש. Yeah.
You always said that you let people take. Look, a person keeps asking him.
What?
Do they have that asking still?
If you think that people...
let people take,
if you let people take, but if you think that people are not going to take without asking you, then I cannot take without your permission.
But I give you permission. Well, what if it says you permission? But every single time each person takes this once. So you don't know every single time.
No. So if he tells you, so just tell me, take whatever he wants, and that's it.
I told him.
That's it. If you have a whole yeshiva, there you go, I told you that's what you wanted for. If you would have a whole yeshiva of people like that, then taka, you wouldn't, then no one could take. But most people are not like him, and therefore you're allowed to take. Okay, this question, I asked Rabbi Katz, because I'm not sure, he's the expert. What's better, davening, saying the words clearly but not understanding, or davening, understand what you're saying but not saying them clearly? So first he gave the cliche, asked Rabbi Katz. First he gave the cliche answer. You have to daven and say the word, and say the words clearly. But I asked him, fine. But if it's one or the other, so Rabbi Katz said it's more important to daven and understand what you're saying, even though the words are not being said so clearly. He brought a medish which says ודגלו Aהבה, which says that the Eibishter has a big love when it's his children, even though they're saying the wrong things, they're saying words that are not okay. There's a number of midrashim like that where they're saying psukim and the wrong mistakes, but Hashem enjoys it more. He didn't add, but there's a famous story that Tzemach Tzedek, and Tzemach Tzedek's Rebbitzin Chaya Mushka the first, so she would say Tillim all the time, and apparently she didn't read so clear, and she would make mistakes in her reading sometimes. And her children, the Tzemach Tzedek's children, would laugh at their mother, like we all like laughing at our mothers. Mom, you didn't know how to read. And it's not, unlike David Bring, does not laugh at his mommy. Very good. Probably because on Asktherav.com it says you're not allowed to, that's why, probably. So Tzemach Tzedek told his children, don't laugh at her, because with all of her mistakes that she's saying, the joke was that one of her sons asked her, Mommy, how can you make new mistakes every time? It's like a real son to mother stuff. So this Tzemach Tzedek told him that don't laugh at her, because her Tillim with all of her mistakes is very precious Lamaila, so therefore don't make fun. So that's Bapash is the same idea. The main thing is the kavanah. Huh? I can't hear you.
The chicken sounds.
The chicken sounds. Yeah, that's another story. That's not saying the words at all. Yeah. That you can't stop me like that. You have to put questions in Q&A. I'm not such a big mumcha. I need time to prepare. Question: why doesn't yeshiva get someone to teach their bochrim how to close their top buttons? It's just very, very expensive to hire people to do these kind of jobs. So it's all fun. You can't do it.
Rabbi, What's the question? What's the question?
I knew that's why you have it. Why don't people come to shnaim mikra ve'echad targum?
Because it's in the middle of phone time. It's not food.
I have a different answer. My answer is the same reason why bochrim don't learn in the middle of Seder Girsa. Because there's something called the Yetzer Hara, and they don't want to learn, and they don't want to come to Seder. That's the well? Seder is not phone time, and you don't learn in Seder either. So what's the connection? Elamai, you don't want to learn, so the same thing over here. The Seder. That's my opinion. If you can live anywhere besides Crown Heights, Postville, and Eretz Yisrael, where would you live? You took out all the best places. Huh?
The best places.
You don't want to live in Cabo, because then every time you leave, you go into fall into depression and your life is over. You have to live in a place that you can leave and come back and still be happy. Shneur said the Great Depression is over, because we're getting closer to the next visit, that's why. But there's the Ebenezer, there's a word, it's about different things. There's a person that left, there was a person that left, it's a marshal for something. In the city there's lights, and then the road is dark. The person leaves the city, so the light still shines on him, and then slowly it gets darker, and then he goes to the next city, the new light starts shining on him. So he's on the way closer to the new city, so now the lights, now you're in between, you're about to leave. So then. What? What's the answer? Where should you live? You can't live at, yeah, maybe probably Houston. Oh, questions from me? I would see what my options are. Which lichas I'm needed. Someone would ask me. I would listen. Over the years, I've had different offers to work in different places. If I wouldn't be able to live over here, I would see what my options are. If I would have to choose on my own, you don't choose on your own. Hashem sends you options. I didn't choose here. Hashem sent me here. What's your memories of 9/11? Really want to know?
Going into a building and then
My memory is that I was a bocher in 770, and there was a fellow bocher. It wasn't really a close friend of mine, but there's a fellow bocher that a couple of days before 9/11, he was crossing Eastern Parkway, not by the green light and not by the lights, and he was run over by a car, and he broke both of his legs. So he was an Israeli bocher, and he didn't know English. So when they took him to the hospital in Manhattan, the bochrim that were his close friends wanted to make sure there's a rotation of bochrim with him. So they asked a whole bunch of guys that were knew English also to be there. So I had one night, the night that I was meant to go was Leil Chav Gimel Elul, which is the night before 9/11, and my shift was meant to be throughout the night to be in the hospital. So me and a friend of mine, he's an Israeli bocher, we both went the day before. We took the subway, and we went to the hospital. We went upstairs, and we were with him for a little bit. They sent us downstairs to the lobby, but upstairs, whatever. So we spent the night in the hospital. Kivyachol being there, he needs any help. He doesn't speak English. And the next morning, the other two bochrim came over to take us over. And when one of them comes in, you heard what happened? So what? One plane flew into the Twin Towers. So whatever. I want to go back to 770. I need to say slichas. I have no time for this. Who cares? I'm going weiter. So me and my friend, we walk outside, and we go into the subway, and we started. This is 9/11 in the morning. We're in the subway, and as we're traveling, suddenly it starts getting full of smoke, and people start crying and whatever, and then the subway stops. And then apparently, so we were by a station. The first car was by a station. Those that know how subways work. So we had to walk through the cars and walk out of the station. We walked out and we walked upstairs, and there was like a cloud of like dust and papers. Papers like this, like probably 10 billion papers. I'm probably exaggerating, but maybe just a little bit. Papers and dust and like debris all over the floor. Till today, I should have picked up some papers. I've been like a cool souvenir. But I need to go to 770. I have no time for this. So we started walking. We find out that everything is another. Kitzer is another place here, another one. Kitzer, we continue walking. So we're walking, and there's thousands and tens of thousands of people. Everybody's walking and walking. We find out which bridge we're supposed to be going to. And middle, as we're walking, it sounded like another plane or something. So there's a cop that was there. So I asked him, "No, where did the next plane hit?" So he's, "Oh, you're a terrorist. You know what's happening?" And he wanted to arrest me. But I continued walking, and I didn't let him catch me. And we continued walking. And then as we're walking, so we ended up getting to the bridge. And by the bridge, I think some Israeli guy was walking behind me apparently, and he was like, so they said in Hebrew, let the Americans understand what we're going through all the time, like all these terrorist attacks that we have. That was another memory. Continued walking, and then I crossed the bridge closer to Grand Army Plaza over there. Sayyid saw me, I think a Lubavitcher, if I'm not mistaken, and he saw us walking. He could give us a ride to 770. I went to 770, and I went to the mikveh. And in the mikvah I saw Kozשוminsky. Kozשוminsky is a legend in Crown Heights. He passed away. He was an older bocher in his 50s. Bocher meaning he was single. And he had memories and everything. He was a very big historian and big Baal Shmua. So he was in the mikveh. He was unwell, the Gashmis. He had like some things with his body. He wasn't able to walk around too quickly. So he was in the mikveh, and he told me, you're going to remember this day the rest of your life. I'm telling you guys in the story, and I know these things. This is a special day. Okay, Seder. And Kitzer, I finished mikveh. I went upstairs. I went to 770. It was very, very uncomfortable. Davening, saying slichas like 10 o'clock and at 11 o'clock. It's a lo matim. It's a pasnish. I started saying slichas so late. Malasot, embrera. I didn't have a choice. So I said slichas, and then I davened. And after that, I was wearing a mask also. They had a mask. Someone gave a mask somewhere along the way because there was so much smoke. And then it was my brother. My brother got married a couple of days before that. So it was my brother Sheva Brachas. So when I finally came to the Sheva Brachas, it was like lunchtime. That Sheva Brachas lunchtime. I told my mother, it's fine, it's Seder. Okay, I woke up. What do you mean? So I was in Manhattan last night. She freaked out. What? If I would have known, I would have been so scared. But no, she couldn't know. She couldn't go scared because she didn't know. So, but Baruch Hashem, everything was fine. And then that was it. That was the day itself. And then afterwards, we said Chitas that day. So as soon as we said Chidas, right, we noticed today's Chidas was Gosh Yisramelach Srifach Olarzo. That day's Chidas was about that. And the people are saying, oh, this is the famous Gimel de Slichas, because the third day of Slichas is a mystery, what it's supposed to be about. So everyone was saying, oh, this is what it means. So people were talking this and that. And then there were discussion and that. And then people were saying, oh, so that day 1414 opened. 1414, the big dormitory on President Street. Years ago was a dormitory. Then it was a apartment building back and forth. It was always Kitzer. And they had renovated it. And that day was the first day that it opened. And apparently, David Raskin, I said years before that the day, it's never going to happen. The Twin Towers are going to fall down before it opens up. And that was the shmur that happened at the time. People mentioned that also that day. And then life continued more or less. Yeah, and then there was no Mitzvah in the next couple of weeks because you couldn't go on the subways, and Manhattan was closed down basically. You couldn't go there. And then there were certain friends that were stuck in different places and what's happening. And I think that's my memories pretty much. Shkai, I'm Seder, Agar, now you have it. Huh? It is or is not?
I said it sounded like you read that story in the book.
Oh, somewhere in the book. No. Okay, it's not. This is what happened with me. Question: If the Jews have nothing to do with Israel, will the non-Jews still hate us? Yes, unfortunately. There's a podcast that I used to listen to that I stopped listening to. If the Jews would have nothing to do with Israel, will the non-Jews still hate us? So it's a podcast from, I mentioned it last time, Yehuda from Jewish History Soundbites. So he had a series years ago, and I used to listen to him, about anti-Semitism. And he brought out that there's something called national anti-Semitism, political anti-Semitism, and religious anti-Semitism. And basically, no matter what the Jews did throughout the centuries, they were always hated and always persecuted, whether they were too rich or they were too poor, they were too smart, they were too stupid, they were too much with the Goyim, they were too much without the Goyim. Whatever we did, there was always the Goyim hated us. And Israel is another excuse. It was before and after, never changed, nothing. The hatred to Klal Yisrael, unfortunately, began by Har Sinai. One of the reasons for the name Sinai is Lashon Sina. Because when Hashem gave us the Torah, Yorda Sina L'Umma Sayim, the Goyim started hating us, and they've hated us ever since. Another famous Maimer Chazal, Halacha She'esav Sayna L'Yaakov, they hate us, and whatever we're going to do is going to change. And the Rebbe always complains about this, that the Israeli government tries to make the Goyim happy. We'll do this, and then you'll be happy. Whatever we're going to do, they're going to hate us. It makes no difference. I like the question. Is there ribbis to charge an extra page of Tanya if I don't have it complete by the given time? No, it's not ribbis. Ribbis is if you borrow money from somebody, and the person says, I'm lending you the money on condition that that you're going to pay me back X, Y, Z. Not just, I borrowed $10, you pay me back $12. That's ribbis. But over here, it's basically another knas. And Allah gives a knas and says, you have to do X, Y, Z by a certain time. And if you didn't do by a certain time, you get another knas. It's not considered for the question, the first daf is also ribbis. Anytime you take a knas, it's ribbis. Ribbis is extra interest. It has nothing to do. This is another knas, a separate knas, which on Halacha does in order to ensure that the bochrim are being responsible and accountable for their days. All right. What? Interest, you can't give a knas. When you lend money to somebody, so by the way, there is a heter to do that. There is a heter. There's something called a heter iska. Heter iska is a circumventing the law where you give a loan and collect interest. And one of the ways to make it work is precisely this method. You say, I'm going to give you a knas if you don't pay me on time. It is used in halacha. Very good. Okay, this is a heavy question. Is it forbidden to kiss or hug another bocher? According to hashkafah or according to Hasidus? Very, very heavy question. It's forbidden to have chibuk v'nishuk, hugging and kissing arayas. Arayas means any woman that you're not allowed to marry. So a person is not allowed to kiss or hug chibuk v'nishuk. So when it comes to father and daughter or mother and son, it's permitted. But when it comes to a sister, it's questionable, but that's not the conversation. But when it comes to a person that you're not allowed to marry, it's forbidden. Well, you're not allowed to marry a man. A man cannot marry a man, so the will be forbidden. On the other hand, Klal Yisrael, all the years, we see tzaddikim meeting each other, kissing each other. It's a normal thing. Yet tonight is the yard of the Baba Sali, one of the biggest tzaddikim ever, and people always came to him and they kissed him on the hand. That was a normal thing by tzaddikim all the time. So, the chayra, what's going on over here? So, it's a bit uncomfortable to talk about, but it has to be explained that there are different types of how a person can love his fellow bocher. The one in Ahavas Yisrael means loving your fellow Jew. That means I love my fellow Jew. But if a bocher is going to come over to you and tell you, I love you, you're going to be creeped out. But if he tells you, I like you, then it's not so creepy. But I have to love my fellow Jew. So I'm supposed to love you. Why can't I say I love you? Why is it creepy? Because the way we live our lives is there's different types of love. There's a loving, I can love you in a way that I love your pnimius. I love your personality. I love you as a Jew. And then there's, I can love you in a chitzonistic way. I love your body. I love your looks. And that's something which is creepy and wrong. But it goes together. Because when you love somebody, like, for example, you love your parents. Are your parents good looking? You never thought about that, the average person. I don't know why parents are good looking. What does that mean, Bechlal? I love my siblings. I love my children. Are they good looking? That's a weird question. I don't think about it that kind of way. I love them and they're good and that's it. There's no thought process about good looking when it comes to my parents or my people that I love in that kind of way. But the good friends that I like in a real kind of way, in a healthy kind of way, it never crosses my mind to think about those things. Sometimes there's a friendship where I have a desire to give the guy a hug or a kiss. Now, that can be complicated, because when I go home and I see my children, I want to hug and kiss them. But a healthy father, a healthy mother, there's no negative connotation, there's no negative meaning whatsoever. But if I'll see a friend of mine that I didn't see in a long time, I'll give him a hug and a kiss, and I mean it in a sincere way, just like I hug my children, as from a real Ahavah. But when sometimes a person has another bocher and has an urge to hug and kiss him, it can be problematic. Now, as much as this is awkward and seems like it's off, it is not as rare as you think it is. It's not as rare where bochrim have this kind of feeling. Now, what happens is when a bocher has this kind of urge, sometimes he starts thinking to himself, something's messed up with me, I'm a mishkav zachernik, something's wrong with me. So it's not necessarily like that, and 99.9% of the time it's not a real issue, but it has to be discussed and explained. It's something which has to be talked about because there's a lot of factors that come into these kind of feelings, especially you have Siddish bocher that doesn't do any averis, doesn't let himself think machshav zaris. There is a natural urge that the body has, and if it's not taken care of properly, it'll find ways to express itself. So in the non-Jewish world, or the person that doesn't keep Yiddishkeit, it can be expressed in a way of doing averis, but in a person that's healthy, in a Siddish bocher, so it doesn't have that outlet. So where does it go? So here it gets complicated. That has to be harnessed in a healthy kind of way. And it's complicated. But sometimes what ends up happening is that bocher doesn't know himself. Often you have a chsidish bocher that doesn't know what mishkav zacharnik means. He doesn't know these things at all, and he has the urge to hug and kiss a fellow bocher. He himself doesn't know what he's feeling. He doesn't understand his feelings. He doesn't know yet. In his mind, it's nothing negative. It's not in any kind of negative kind of way, but it's still not okay. So it's really a very, very broad area, and there's a lot more to talk about it. So, but back to the original question, the pashtus, Yaakov. I see you're a bit too immature for these conversations. You can step out if you want. It's something which it comes up again. In my many bochrim, it comes up in different ways of their lives. It comes up, and some bochrim are confused with themselves. Some bochrim understand it more clearly. It's relatively a normal thing, and it has to be dealt with properly. When it comes to relationships, friendships amongst bochrim, it can sometimes happen when a bocher starts feeling obsessed with another bocher. Sometimes a bocher is friendly with his friend, but to the extent that he's always like, where is he the whole time? Is he in Zali? Where did he go? What's he doing? And if he spoke to somebody else, why isn't he speaking to me right now? That can be borderline in the same category that we're talking about now, but not. It doesn't mean mishka zachar. Okay, there's a lot more to talk about that you already might have. I just want to finish off regarding the gufei shel inyan, regarding the actual question. The answer is according to Halacha, pashtus it's mutar. However, according to hashkafah and Hasidus, for the most part, it's not okay, and therefore it should b'derech klal not be done. If you didn't see a friend in a long time, giving a hug is a normal thing, and there's no problem with that. If you feel weird of it, if it weirds you out, then you should not be doing it no matter what. When in doubt, sheva al say do not do it. Yes, many.
Someone wrote a letter to the Rebbe that he was very attracted to a bocher, and the Rebbe said that you should tell him, and you should tell the bocher that he's attracted to, and it was Manas Friedman.
He said the story. The other bocher was attracted to Manas Friedman, and what I like to verify the story. I know of a story of somebody that told me. First, there was a mashpia in yeshiva that I spoke to about this once, and this mashpia told me that he had a bocher that confided him, he has these thoughts, and this mashpia wrote him to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe didn't answer. And that's one thing. But then there's someone else, an older, he told me that when he was a bocher in Bromwa, this is going back 40, 50 years ago, so there's a bocher that had these thoughts, and he wrote him to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe told him not to go to the mikvah. So it's really, you have to know a lot of pratim and things. So that story, I'm just telling you what this older person told me. I know the person that told me, I know his name. Obviously, I didn't ask him who that person was, but he told me that there was such a concept. It's really, every case has to be discussed. You have to know exactly what the feelings are. I speak to an older person that has a bit more experience. I can discuss what your feelings are. Sometimes it's fine. It's not such a big deal. You like the person very much. You'll be his friend. Sometimes it could be obvious. It's all in a healthy kind of way. It doesn't always have to be a terrible thing. There's many different levels and layers of this kind of question. And it's really, I could talk a lot more and give different scenarios and different cases that I was involved with and share like what the unhealthy reaction was, what the healthy reaction should be. The Talmudim, there's a mashpia or mashgiach, whatever, in the Crown Heights, Rabbi Pekarsky, the senior. Today he doesn't work in yeshiva anymore, but years ago he worked in Al Torah, and he's a very big mumcha in this subject. He's actually a brilliant person. I don't think he has any kabbalah about it from anybody else, but I think with all of his experience dealing with bochrim over the years, I've sent bochrim that had these issues to him in the past, and they came away very, very happy with his advice. So that's a person that I would send if anyone has any questions. But over the years I've spoken to him also. I've heard different ideas that he said. So again, if it's relevant on a personal basis, this is definitely a thing which bochrim talk to their mashpiyim about, ask them for advice. All right, might have.